Okay. Hello, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever folks are tuning in from. We are back here with DiasPOR US, um, with a really critical and important voice and guest today. Um, as most people know, un Boricua en Gaza, todavía libre, y todavía viviendo. We're here with Libre, and we're going to talk a little bit about the current state of our brothers and sisters in Gaza post fictitious ceasefire put into place by the US government alongside um, the current Israeli government. And we're going to look at what those violations look like, both on the ceasefire front, but also violations on the amount of aid that is currently being let in. And we're just going to kind of have a dialogue around what it looks like for the community, how people who are over there standing hand in hand doing the work are kind of moving through this. And we thought, what a better way than to have um, really a liberatory Puerto Rican voice like Libre chiming in from Gaza to discuss. There might be some adjustments with sounds or noise if Israel decides to set off a few more drones, as has been the case. So bear with us. This is not our most typical conversation, but I think one of our most important ones. So welcome. Please introduce yourself however you see fit. Libre.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you. Well, para mi gente, it's always good to be in space and to talk to our people and to talk to those that are interested in continuing the conversation about what's happening. I'm an educator, cultural worker, and in this current capacity, I'm a volunteer here in Gaza. And I've been here almost 2 years. I've been here a majority of this ongoing genocide under different capacities, educator, logistics with internationals working at hospitals, and now I'm mostly focused on water distribution. So I've gotten to see a lot of different aspects and kind of the attacks on the social fabric here in Gaza over a span of about 19 months. Um, and yeah, that's we'll start. And I'm Boricua, and this is a cause that is dear to my heart because there's a lot of similarities. And that's part of the reason why I've chosen to stay here for so long and to help in a very tangible way. Because in some ways, what's happening here has already happened or can happen to our people, depending on which aspect of the things you're looking at.
Thank you. So before we move forward, how are you? Because I've been following you for almost a couple years now, and I think one of the earlier videos that I saw of you that crushed me was the conversation around like the loss that you've also endured. These are your people, your family, your community, right? Like it's not just I know for a fact it's not just a volunteer duty. And so the immense loss that I can imagine has also affected you. How are you doing in this moment, and what keeps you pushing forward?
Um, in terms of the loss, I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about enough, that we're always talking about here because we have to, is the fact that we can't even properly grieve, right? There's the genocide is ongoing, and when we lose people, the bombs don't stop, the drums don't stop, the occupation doesn't stop, and so um, you know, have my backpack here ready just in case. We had to evacuate in an emergency. And uh, I mean, I remember it was under a military operation, Gideon's Chariot. Gideon's Chariot's the first operation because there's two military operations by that same name, where we lost maybe 70 people in the span of about 2 months, and it's you don't forget these things. So not only can you not properly grieve, but you start to like in your mind play out como que, you know, y por qué? Like why did it have to happen? Like why did a 9-year-old girl, when there was a starvation, like for 6 months, we didn't get any food into the Gaza Strip. Everybody lost weight,
I
and
remember that.
people,
I remember your video
yeah,
around that time as well.
yeah, um, and we were trying to talk with people, but we were also like forcibly displaced and evacuating, and Ayat, who would have been 10 years old 2 days ago. She was 9. She survived a massacre in a school. Half of her body was burned. They didn't even have the proper medical equipment, so they were cleaning her half of her body with vinagre because they didn't have anything else, and she couldn't get the proper protein. And the same day that she was supposed to be medically evacuated, she died. Um, there's no justification for what is happening. That's one of hundreds of thousands of examples of people that have lost their lives for no reason other than ethnic cleansing, and that's why there's a genocide. Because you hay que decir la cosa como son. A genocide is one side is has a military and it's attacking a civilian population, and even the Israeli occupation forces have admitted that at least 85% of the people that they have killed throughout this genocide have been civilians. So they're telling you, what they're doing. Um, and so it's been very tough, and we're still losing people. And so you're building community under these circumstances where they want you to lose your human dignity, and the Gazans are refusing to, right? Like we're still like today, we had an azume, which is a typical, a traditional Palestinian thing where you cook together, you eat together, you spend time together. It's Friday, it's our rest day. And so doing this throughout the time that I've been here and building these relationships and building the community, it's really been, you take a risk because the double edge to meeting people is that you open yourself to losing them, and that has been the case a lot. And so how am I doing? I mean, there's no such thing as mental health under these conditions, because even if you're okay for a second, you'll hear the drones, which I'm hearing right now. Yesterday they were so loud. I made a post about it. You can't hear your thoughts sometimes, and you're like, how do I drown this sound out? Um, and
And it's
so
important to point out there is no other purpose for this other than torture. Eve,
yeah, yeah,
considering that there's an imaginary, let's call it ceasefire in place, there's no purpose in this kind of like air and noise pollution other than to torture people. And I just want to take a moment to point that out because I think people are becoming a little disillusioned with what's happening as if there's still some kind of mission taking place. What is happening now is, in fact, current ethnic cleansing, but we're moving stages now throughout the genocide, and we understand that they are trying to break the remaining communities down as further as much as possible.
yeah. I mean, everybody has been forcibly displaced, some more than others, and most people are without homes because 94% of homes in the Gaza Strip have been destroyed throughout this genocide. Over 80% of buildings have been destroyed. So most people are living in tienda de campaña, in tents, and it's wintertime, so it's raining, it's cold. The Zionists are not letting in the tents. They're also not letting in medicine, and they're not letting in rebuilding things. So like things to remove the rubble so people can start to rebuild.
And they're
Um,
only rebuilding in the zone that has been now been taken by the Israeli government. So that's the other violent portion here, right? So they're not allowing the people that are still there and displaced to rebuild, um, which is another violation of this fictitious ceasefire. Sorry, I'm just plugging little notes because for those that are chiming in or maybe tuning back in, and this is something that I discussed with you, I feel that there's kind of a fatigue. I'd call it a Gaza, Sudan genocide fatigue, but it's almost as if people have kind of had enough in the last couple of years and they heard the word ceasefire back in October and it's
Hmm.
just not been that. That's just not the reality. And so I would love for this conversation to kind of attempt to pull some of those focuses back in. Um, so I'll just be jumping in, not to cut you off. I want you to continue, but that's important to note. It is a violation of the ceasefire. They're not allowing these materials in.
And to date, since the beginning of this supposed ceasefire, and we're going to say supposed ceasefire because what I would say is it's actually just a slower genocide, and a continuation of the Nakba 1948, because people are continuing to be forcibly displaced both in their own homeland and also outside of Gaza. But there's no real ceasefire. They've violated the ceasefire over 591 documented times, which means obviously there's been more. And they continue to do these, and this has been through. I remember one day they massacred 104 people during the ceasefire, supposed ceasefire, and and they didn't let food in, so like they blocked anything coming in for maybe 2 days. So
And
and
they're still only letting about 70 to 146 of the proposed 600 trucks in per day. So it is a very slow version of what they've been accomplishing because even if, all right, tomorrow we're not letting it in, when they do begin to let it in again, they're not even uh recuperating the lost time. It's
yeah,
brutal.
and and what they're letting in, just so that people are aware, are mostly Israeli products. So there's this whole boycott BDS movement. They're letting in Israeli products, or it's like carbohydrate, not nutritional, nothing with nutritional value. And so people and they're doing this intentionally so that people look like they're eating, and they do have access to more food, when in reality they're not getting any nutritional value. And the moment the aid is cut off again, we'll go back to looking emaciated. And there's still people dying from hunger.
Yeah.
There's still limited quality or limited quantities of baby food being let in. So babies are, and this happened last year. Last year, 14 babies died during the winter, because the mothers are struggling to get food. So that the babies are born premature, they don't have access to nutrition. The mothers can't breastfeed because they're not getting enough food. So the baby is already in a bad situation. It's cold outside. They're not letting in blankets. They're not letting in tents. They're not letting in the proper things, sweaters, the things that we need to prepare for winter. And so you have babies and people dying from the cold, and people dying because they don't have the proper nutrition or access to these very basic things. And yeah, so there's no need to call it a ceasefire, but this was propaganda, just to make people stop talking about it. And they've done very similar things. They're doing very similar campaigns right now in Sudan and in Congo, where there are genocides
Yeah.
happening right now.
They just signed a
There's a
peace deal.
ceasefire agreement,
Yeah, a
but
peace
guess
deal
what?
with Congo,
E-
not Sudan, and also just to take the resources, like ceasefire for whom?
And the thing is, all of these ceasefires have been written by the people that are financing the genocides, and so we have to question that, right? If the UAE is writing
Yeah,
the peace agreement for Sudan, uh, we have to question that, because they're the ones that are funding the RSF to kill
yeah.
people right now.
Hmm.
And in the Congo, the U.S. is trying to do this ceasefire situation so that they can go in and take more land, and they can take advantage of the cobalt and the diamonds and the other mineral riches that the country has, and pretend that they're, doing them a favor when they're behind and funding all of this. And also, fun fact, and I always try to talk about how all the three genocides are connected. 40% of Israel's capital comes from the Congo. 40% of the economy of Israel is funded by the exploitation of Congolese people, and that's like not a small amount. It ties back to Dan Gertler, this super rich Zionist that owned a diamond mining company and cobalt mines and stuff, and now Bill
So,
Gates
and
are looking.
this is not recent either.
Nope.
The longstanding history of uh, not gold only, but diamond theft and blood diamond and
Hmm.
Zionism and the companies that this is long standing, long running. So it begs the question for those, and I always think it's important to bring it back home for those who come from, we'll look at our community, for example, the Puerto Rican diaspora, people wondering how invested they should be. Because another argument that, I do a lot of organizing for Puerto Rican liberation, so I work with different organizations, and there's a real conversation around, well, we've got to focus on what's happening in the island. We've got to focus on our community, our sovereignty. And it begs this question, if they are going to be able to get away with this, why would it ever open the doorway or a pathway? Why would they ever allow us to seek sovereignty in our own country? These are all the same. I don't even want to say test runs because they're succeeding. When you annihilate a people, lifelines, and family lineages, you are succeeding to some degree in your mission. And so
Hmm.
let's talk a little bit about how we bring this back home for our communities and those that are feeling a little bit like disillusioned
Esto
that
no tiene nada que.
yeah, that they think they can separate the two.
Well, the thing is, both both the illegal occupation of Borinquen since 1898, and um, uh, the Nakba, 1948. Congo has been an ongoing genocide since the 19th century, right? When Leopold committed a genocide against the Congolese, and it just continued. And Sudan, this genocide is titled as a war, but it's not. Um, and so all of these are actually connected. And if we want to bring it back home, right, to Borinquen, I mean, the drones that they've been using over here are now flying in Aguadilla. The Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest nuclear powered aircraft carrier, that was in Israel before it went to the Caribbean in this war on drugs against Venezuela, is in Puerto Rico, 5,000 troops on top of the 5,000 troops that were already sent to Puerto Rico. And now all seven military bases are reactivated, even though the people of Vieques and Culebras fought to
Fought
get
and
the
died.
U.S. Marines
Amount of
and
people that we
died,
lost.
locked up, and people are still traumatized. Like, we've been seeing some interviews coming out of people talking about, how if we have to do this again, we will, because now we're hearing the F-35s, jets, the ones that are being used here to bomb people, they're flying out of Puerto Rico, and people are remembering when the U.S. used to drop bombs. And keep in mind, in Vieques, they forcibly displaced thousands of Viequenses and took over 75% of the land and tested it on, Agent Orange, different bombings. They killed the Boricua, which was the turning point, that led to ultimately a temporary leaving of the US military, because they left in a clause, if we need to come back, we will. And guess what? As of September, they needed to come back. So now they're back. And that's why we need permanent solutions. We need to continue organizing, because, um, it's Puerto Rico was tested so that they can create war in other places, and now it's coming back home.
And
Um,
it always
and
comes back home.
and um, And Zionists are trying to build a resort, Proyecto Esencia, if people are not
And
familiar with it.
not just Zionists, but we've got also folks from the UAE
Tech
making their way
Bros.
over. So talk about full circle.
So, this has a lot to do, and people are like, "Oh, you're Boricua, like, why don't you just go back to Puerto Rico and fight?" And I was like, "Listen, at the end of the day, if we look at our ancestors whose steps we are following, they understood that in order for us to have a successful movement, we need to be international. So we need to be taking our causes to other countries and also realizing and supporting the liberation movements of other countries." Because we can't expect other people to show up for us if we ain't showing up for them. That's not how this works.
It's
Um,
also it's something that is led by example, and like we learned this when we look at how movements like the Young Lords were born out of
mhm,
relationships with the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers understood that what they were attempting to achieve in the United States was only going to be made possible if they took those practices elsewhere. There's a reason that you had coalitions between Palestinians and um, people throughout Latin America, and we were giving birth to these movements simultaneously. It's not, nothing is completed in a vessel. And of course, it's easy, I think, for people to be out of touch with that, because I think by design we've made it so folks are so disconnected to their historical roots, right? If you assassinate these people early on and you don't include them in their textbooks, and you throw some crack into the communities and you destroy all the hard work
mhm.
that people have accomplished, there's very little tying you back to those memories. Um, and
You
so
you you just you just reminded me that the Israelis are trying to infiltrate Gaza with drugs. They're putting it in the flour, which is U.S. aid. They're putting oxycodone, and other drugs into the food aid. And if people don't, for example, like sift through the flour, they might be accidentally becoming addicted to a drug without ever knowing it. And this is exactly what they did to our Black and Brown communities and our immigrant communities back in the 70s when they wanted to say, "Oh, we have a drug problem." And it's like, okay, you're sending the drugs here, and we know this. The CIA in the 1960s and 70s was selling drugs and putting them in our communities and criminalizing our people so that they could fund their contra wars against the liberation movements in South America. We know this. So you think they stopped it? No. And in fact now it's being used as a framework, and Israel's doing the same thing. They're trying to make people addicted to drugs here, a community that before this genocide had one of the highest literacy rates in the world now has no universities, no schools, everything is
no
destroyed,
libraries, no cultural
no food
centers.
sovereignty, no nothing. And 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 they also don't have outlets, so maybe they are looking for something. And if
Yeah,
they accidentally get access to these drugs, then we will have a drug problem where one never existed, and now we
yeah,
have a homeless population
yeah.
where one never existed.
Existed, yeah,
And this should sound really familiar because they did that to
yeah.
us. They did
Well,
this to us.
yeah. Even our own Puerto Rican community, like I have to always often remind people, you know, there's a reason that we're not on the island.
Hmm.
My parents didn't migrate or come to the United States because they were seeking the American dream. They it made it impossible for us to live. I mean, my father alone is a post-Vietnam War draft veteran who like experienced PTSD. So he needed to leave the island because that's what he associated with that period of his life. My abuela, and my abuelo, they came to, because they could not survive on the like malnutrition was killing our
Hmm.
people in an island where we can grow almost anything. So it was created. Everything was created by design, and I want this conversation to kind of serve as a reminder for folks that assume that the pathway to liberation in Puerto Rico can be attempted by disconnecting themselves with what's happening abroad with our brothers and sisters in the Congo, in Sudan, in Palestine, because it cannot. It will not. Um, and if it was possible, they wouldn't be firing people from their jobs or, disappearing
100%.
people or locking people up or, devouring the
And
Constitution.
and also we have to keep in mind what we allow to happen in Gaza will become the new standard globally, and that will affect Boricuas before it affects any other ones. Why? Because we're a colony, so we don't get to make our own laws. We become, and we have been always, the guinea pig for the U.S. and also the launching pad for all of their proxy wars that they've created and manufactured throughout history. And this is why they don't want us to know history, because then we kind of can't connect these dots. But it's really important to understand, like, the US is using us, and they're not gonna protect us. The governor, the que no sirve para nada, Jennifer Gonzalez, she's like, oh, the US will protect us if Venezuela attacks. No, they won't. Did they
Venezuela
did
is not
they
attacking us.
First of all, they're not attacking us. And it's also important, like, to know historically, when has the U.S. ever came to save us? And the answer is never.
If
Look at what they did
anything,
after Huracán Maria.
if they could feed us to the wolves first, they would make sure they do. And literally, we see that in post Maria Puerto Rico. It's not even just what happened in the weeks that follow. Like the people on the island are still, I was just talking about this yesterday, are still reeling from the effects of that hurricane. That hurricane is why we are now dealing with Luma.
Exacto.
That
Y la
hurricane is why
Junta.
we still have outages of water and light for days on end now. We're not talking about a few hours anymore. People are out of water and light in Puerto Rico right now. 2 weeks ago, in a Body Collective meeting, people are like, yeah, it's day 5. It's day 5. So, yeah, que no sirve para nada is the perfect word because it's, it's,
And I mean, it's serving the US at the
yeah,
end of the day.
not
Whether
us.
it's
Yeah,
PNP or PPD,
yeah.
they want to keep us in this, oh, it's this side or that
Estado
side. It's like,
libre.
both of
Yeah.
y'all are the problem.
Hmm.
We need independence. That's
Hmm.
our solution. But again, what we allow to happen in Gaza is gonna affect us first. So of course we're gonna have our people on the front lines that
Yeah.
are continuing to organize to for our people to come back, right? Because that's part of it too.
Yeah.
6 million of us, 2/3 of our population live outside of our country. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a big problem, and we have to figure out, like, we need to literally go back. We need to rematriate
Yeah.
to Borinquen. And we also had to be supporting, the movements happening throughout the Caribbean,
Yeah.
because, St. Croix, as
Yes.
part of the U.S. Virgin Island, is also being illegally occupied by U.S. troops right now. They're in Panama, they're in Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana. There's, it's not like they're gonna stop. And it's the same thing with Israel. It's not like they're gonna stop with
No.
Palestine. They're just gonna
No.
move to Lebanon
Yep.
and Jordan and
Syria.
Syria,
Hmm.
the Grand
Yeah.
Israel. They're gonna, even Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
They're gonna come for all these
Yeah.
places. And the U.S. wants the same thing. It's this
Yeah.
this Monroe Doctrine. That, we're the civilized ones. We're
Yeah.
gonna steal your resources so we can develop our country, call you uncivilized,
Yeah.
even though you're really underdeveloped, because we're taking your resources and not allowing you to develop, but you're the ones that are wrong. And if you try to resist, you're the terrorist. What?
And it's on repeat. That's the part. I can't believe in my lifetime I watched the Twin Towers burn to the ground at age 11, and I'm going to watch us attempt to repeat in another country in El Caribe. Like it's for me, it's really like I'm not that old. Like I can't. I personally
Claro.
say I'm like I can't take it again. We got to figure this out. And I think another important tool here, because oftentimes people will listen, they're like, well, what are we supposed to do? What is the solution? And it's important because if we can't be boots to the ground, as some people, if we can't make the move to go back as others, we need to hoard our money under capitalism. And I
Hmm.
think there's a tool that all of us can use in this moment that will impact empire. There simply
And
is. And
and invest in ourselves, like invest in our people. Like
yes,
there's no reason why we should be investing in foreigners
no,
to come develop in our land
at
when
all,
when we can invest in our own people to develop our own land that have more knowledge. You think Luma doesn't know what they're doing?
at all.
Our the largest union was attacked through the creation of Luma, and this and that's not by accident, right? After Huracan Maria, it wasn't Luma that was returning electricity to some places. It was the electricians that formed part of the
Yeah,
biggest
yeah,
union that decided without pay to help their communities and reconnect the electricity.
yeah.
We're always gonna look out for our own, so we might as well be supporting supporting our communities. um, and these ICE raids, like a lot of these ICE agents and the police are being trained by the Zionists. So,
Hmm.
we're seeing these outrageous videos of some Vende Patrias attacking our Dominican brothers and sisters
Literally on
and our
our
Haitian
island,
brothers and sisters.
on our
And it's
island.
like
It's
it's
occupied.
like it's like what kind of Stockholm syndrome type
Yes,
shit is that?
what is
It's like,
happening?
you know, we're Caribbean. If anything, we
Hmm.
should be trying to get them gringos out.
Hmm. Well, Libre, I want to bring us to a close. And I think the most important thing here, because I feel like what's important about your voice right now is that you're there. And I think it's so easy to disconnect for many, many individuals. But the reality is, you've decided to risk your life leaving the West, heading east to be with our brothers and sisters in Gaza. So, what does that kind of decision and commitment mean to you right now? And what would you offer to anyone listening about standing in the gap and what that could mean for our future movements?
I mean, at the end of the day, um, like reading is really important. It's important to be educated and to know our history so we don't repeat these colonial cycles because colonialism is not creative. But liberation is because it forces you to do something different and to lean into that uncomfortability. If we allow ourselves to be led by fear, then we're not going to get anywhere. I'm not here because I'm like, oh, I would love to risk my life and die. I'm here because I love people and I love humanity, and we should protect it because it's sacred. And if you're guided by love, it pushes it pushes it pushes you to do uncomfortable things that at the end of the day make the possibility for change possible. We're not going to get to the other side of fear or to the other side of colonialism if we're just led by fear. Fear is what keeps us trapped. And if we want independence, it's not going to be comfortable, but it's needed and solid. And what I'm doing here is international solidarity. Solidarity is action, it's not words. So we all have to play our role because not everybody can be here, but it doesn't mean you can't help people that are here or you can't keep on educating people and say, no, there isn't a ceasefire, you know, and this does affect our
Yep.
community in direct ways. And so we have to continue to organize. And, I hope that I get to return because, I love my people and I want to continue organizing tangibly in our country. But like, like Pedro Albizu Campos said, and a lot of our ancestors, Filiberto, Lolita, Blanca, they all made sacrifices. And they did it because they love our people. And so, I hope that my contribution is to help inspire our people to see, I'm just a regular person. There's nothing special about me.
We all have the
Besides the
same
fact that I'm
ability.
Boricua,
Yeah,
I got the sazon. I got the sazon, you
just
know. Um, but other than that, like I care about working class people because I grew up with a single mom that had to work hard as fuck, and we made it to where we are today, just so that I can go back and help people because like for me, success isn't just me making it. It's taking my community and making sure we have the infrastructure possible to not have to rely on the people that are colonizing us.
thank
And
you.
that's a global thing.
Literally.
It's a global thing, and we all have to play our role. And so, like our people say, siempre pa'lante, we gotta move forward.
Thank you, Libre. And oh, we're with you. And I can't wait to be with you on this side eventually, organizing for our people.
Ojalá.
Ojalá.